Hello everyone, Jonathan Valentin here, super excited of this journey that we're sharing together. And I'm here to introduce you guys to chapter 4 of the book, The Return of the King by yours truly. Chapter 4 is the father wound. Every man is shaped by the space his father occupied or failed to occupy in his life. James did not fully understand the influence his father had on him until much later. As a boy, he rarely questioned it. Children rarely do. The world they inherit simply becomes normal. He remembered fragments of his childhood more than complete scenes. The sound of arguments in the house, the tension that lingered in the air before the voices rose, and the quiet way adults spoke when they thought he was not listening. His father struggled with addiction, though at the time James did not fully understand what that meant. He only knew that some nights felt unpredictable, unstable, and uncertain. Some nights ended with his mother crying quietly after everything had gone silent again. There were moments where anger erupted without warning, when control disappeared, and when fear replaced the sense of safety a child is supposed to feel inside his own home. James watched these moments from the perspective of a young boy who did not yet have the language to explain what he was witnessing. He only knew that something was wrong. Children absorb more than adults realize. They watch closely. They listen carefully. And long before they can articulate what they are seeing, they begin forming conclusions about their world. James began forming quiet conclusions about what it meant to be a man. Some of those conclusions were reactions. He promised himself he would never treat a woman the way he had seen his mother treated. He promised himself that anger would never control him in the way he had controlled the man who was supposed to guide him. In many ways, those promises shaped him positively. But they also left gaps, because rejecting a broken model does not automatically create a healthy one. A boy who learns what not to become must still discover what he should become. And that discovery, it's not always easy. James grew up with determination. He was driven to prove that his life would not follow the path he had witnessed as a child. Discipline became his resistance to chaos, and responsibility became his shield. He believed that he worked harder, behaved better, and avoided destructive habits. He could escape the pattern he had seen at home. For a time, that approach worked. He built stability in areas of his life that had never once felt fragile. He pursued education, developed professional discipline, and surrounded himself with friends who value responsibility. From the outside, his life appears steady, but internally, certain questions remain unresolved. And one in particular continued to surface. What does healthy masculinity actually looks like? He had seen the destructive version and rejected it. But rejection alone does not provide a blueprint. Occasionally, James encountered older men who seemed to embody a different kind of strength. Men who spoke calmly, carried authority without intimidation, and led their families with steadiness rather than volatility. When he encountered men like that, he felt both admiration and curiosity. How did they become that way? Who had taught them? Because he understood something important. That kind of strength does not appear by accident. It is formed. Many men inherit that formation through their fathers. They learn responsibility through observation, discipline through correction, and leadership through example. But when a father fails to provide that structure, a boy must search for it somewhere else. James began to realize that much of his adult life had been shaped by that search. He searched through books, mentors, spiritual leaders, and conversations with older men who carried the steadiness he admired. Each encounter offered a piece of the puzzle, but the absence of consistent fatherly guidance left certain questions lingering longer than they might have otherwise. Over time, James noticed something that both surprised and unsettled him. Many men around him carried similar wounds. Some had fathers who were physically absent. Others had fathers who were present but emotionally distant. Some had fathers who were kind but passive, while others had fathers who were harsh but inconsistent. Very few describe childhoods shaped by both authority and compassion. Authority without compassion creates fear, while compassion without authority creates instability. But when both are present, they create trust. A child who trusts his fathers learns to trust the structure that father provides. Without that trust, structure feels uncertain. James saw how father wounds often echoed throughout generations. A man who grows up without clear guidance struggles to provide clear guidance to his own children. Not because he lacks love, but because he lacks a model. The pattern repeats quietly. One generation drifts, the next generation searches, and the search continues. James refused to allow that pattern to continue indefinitely, but he began to understand that breaking generational cycles require more than determination. It requires humility. A man must acknowledge the wounds he carries before he can begin to heal them. For many years, James avoided those reflections. It was easier to focus on building his life than to revisit the pain of his childhood. But avoidance does not remove wounds, it only hides them. Eventually, he recognized that the instability he had witnessed as a boy had left deeper impressions that he wanted to admit. His caution in relationships, his hesitations with vulnerability, and his desire to maintain control over his environment were not random traits. They were responses to the instability he had experienced early in life. Recognizing this truth did not lead him to anger towards his father. If anything, it led to something unexpected: compassion. Addiction had consumed the man who should have guided him. That reality did not excuse the harm, but it reveals something tragic about human weakness. James began to see his father not only as the source of his childhood pain, but also as a man who had lost control of his own life. Broken men often break others, not always intentionally, but often inevitably. This realization shifted his perspective. Blame could explain the past, but it could not build the future. Responsibility could. James began asking himself a different question. If the structure he needed had not been given to him, could he still build it? The answer to that question would shape the direction of his life. Because every man eventually faces a decision. Either repeat the patterns he inherited or redefine them. James chose to redefine them. Not because it was easy, but because the alternative was unacceptable. He understood that his future family, if he was blessed to have one, would be shaped by the decisions he made in the present. His children would not need a perfect father, but they would need a responsible one. A father who accepts accountability, demonstrates discipline, and leads with steadiness rather than volatility. James could not rewrite his childhood, but he could rewrite the pattern. And rewriting patterns required courage. It requires a man to confront his past honestly while refusing to let it dictate his future. He understood that healing would not happen overnight. It would happen through consistent decisions, through discipline, humility, and faith. And most importantly, it would happen through responsibility. Responsibility has the power to transform wounds into purpose. The pain of James' childhood had taught him something he could not ignore. The absence of responsible masculinity leaves deep scars, but the presence of responsible masculinity can heal generations. James had once believed that the story of his father defined him. Now he understood something far more powerful. That story was only the beginning. What mattered most was the story he would choose to write next. So glad you joined me. The Return of the King by yours truly, Jonathan Valentin. This has been Chapter 4, The Father Wound. Thank you for your support. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with somebody who needs it. Thank you, everybody, for your support.